This is a scene from a research prototype showing dynamic lighting and geometry. The left view shows dynamic global illumination computed by our technique, while the right shows a constant ambient term. Here's the same scene showing a close-up view of the mirror on the far wall. The spheres visible in the mirror are reflective. With second-order glossy reflections off, they appear unnaturally dark. But with second-order glossy reflections on, the spheres show dynamic rough reflections when viewed in the mirror reflection. This sequence shows dynamic lighting transitions. We purposely transition the lighting faster than the probes can converge to better show differences between the two techniques. The left view shows the base implementation shown in Dynamic Diffuse Global Illumination with Ray Traced Irradiance Fields by Majercik and colleagues. The right view shows our added perceptual encoding. The perceptual encoding speeds light to dark convergence. Here's the sequence again. The left view is the same, but the right view now shows our convergence heuristics. With our heuristics, we get instant first-order convergence, but some large lighting transitions do not converge completely because of the low bit depth representation of the irradiance. Finally, here's the same sequence a third time. The view on the right shows both the perceptual encoding and the convergence heuristics. We still get immediate first-order convergence, and with the perceptual encoding, convergence is now correct for large lighting transitions even at low bit depth. This clip shows another scene from our research prototype. Here's part of that scene showing the effect of self-shadow bias. With no self-shadow bias, we observe light leaks under the awning on the left. With self-shadow bias that is too high, the emissive lighting from the sign on the right is washed out, and the indirect occlusion from the right awning is wrong. Both of these artifacts are fixed with correct self-shadow bias. This view shows our probe state diagram from figure 4 of the paper. The image on the right shows the probes and probe states visualized in a scene, with part of the wall cut away by the camera frustum as labeled in blue. The probes in the walls are off, they never trace or update. The probes in space, not shading geometry, are sleeping. They are not currently tracing or updating. Finally, the green circled probe on the left is vigilant. It is shading the wall on the left, so will always trace and update. The yellow circled probe on the right is awake because it is within the bounding box of the orrery in the top right of the image, which is dynamic geometry. This animation shows pseudocode and concept drawings for our iterative probe state classification algorithm. We trace rays from all uninitialized probes. These rays only intersect static geometry and are not shaded. We then run our iterative probe position optimizer to converge probe locations. We then assign probes initial states. After this step, all probes are either off, newly vigilant, or sleeping. We extend the bounding boxes of all dynamic geometry by the size of a probe grid cell plus the self-shadow bias. Afterwards, all sleeping probes that lie inside one of these extended bounding boxes are set to newly awake. Optionally, we trace rays from all newly vigilant and newly awake probes to converge their values in one frame. We then set all newly vigilant probes to vigilant and all newly awake probes to awake. We then trace rays from all vigilant and awake probes to update their values. Note that we could have skipped the previous step and let new probes converge their values here. This corresponds to the probe update step as it appeared in the original DDGI paper by Majercik and colleagues. This simple scene shows a camera tracking window with static and dynamic geometry. Conceptually, a probe volume covers the entire scene at high resolution, but we cannot afford to store and update a fine resolution probe volume over the entire scene. So, we update a 3D window of probes that tracks the camera. When the camera moves, a new plane of probes spawns in front of it, and the plane furthest behind it disappears. Newly spawned probes are uninitialized. Their values are converged by the update algorithm shown in the previous clip. This is a larger scene from our research prototype with multiple probe volumes at different resolutions. The volumes are shown with a false coloring here to differentiate them. This is a fly-through of that scene. Though new probe planes spawn in front of the camera as it moves, there are no artifacts or instabilities in the GI. This view spans all three volumes, with the ship in the distance lit entirely by the large, sparse volume. The GI is continuous from the camera's position to the end of the level. This night view shows dynamic bounce global illumination from a flashlight in the eaves of the cathedral. This scene from Unity is lit almost entirely by the emissive computer monitors on the left. These are dynamically integrated by our technique. This clip shows the process of setting up a volume to cover a section of a scene in Unity. Finally, here's the same scene with materials removed, showing only the dynamic global illumination computed by our technique. Thank you.